Hey, hi guys. Welcome back to our new video. So here we're gonna learn about writing smart contract. So as we have already seen the logic, like we know what kind of smart contract we need, right? So let me give you the complete detailed structure about writing smart contract. So we have to look for chain code section very first. Uh, yeah, asset transfer basics. So again, we're gonna use the same assets transfer basics repository. We can call the folder over here. And one more thing, this is not required to use exactly this same folder. You can create your own new folder called Chaincode, and that inside Chaincode you can give the path. You can create a folder like lib or contracts anything, and then you can go ahead. So that what exactly we're gonna do over here. So this is the default setup what we already have. Here is like chain code JavaScript, and then okay, one more thing. Uh, Here total we support three different languages for writing smart contract: Go, JavaScript, and Java. You can use any one of the language to write your smart contract. So sometime later we'll try to explore Go language as well. But for today's video, for this playlist specifically, I'm using JavaScript because most of the folks are familiar with the JavaScript. Time we'll create a playlist for Go as well. So now let's do one thing. Let's just simply delete this particular lib. We're gonna not use this, so I just want to give the flair like how exactly you can use it. Okay, so we're gonna delete it. And if you have seen that, I'm in my virtual machine. This is my GCP instance machine, that what we have already created in the earlier setup. Okay, where is that? Just let me go up. Yeah, we deleted now. Inside Chaincode there was lib folder. We deleted that, and I can see the index.js. So now I'll create another folder over here called contracts. So inside that contracts, we're gonna create our multiple contracts. Yeah. So in contract Chaincode sections, I have just created a contract. So now we have to create the different smart contract file for respective contract purpose. Now in our use case, we are using total 3 smart contracts. So first one is here user contract, second one is fund contract, and third one is token contract, right? As I explained in previous videos. So what I will do is just simply copy this one and just create a 3 different files. So yeah, UserContract.js, just give the proper naming convention. You have to give it user small just for standard purpose, right? User contract will got create. Yeah, user contract got created. So let me just split it a little bit to view my readme parallelly. Nice. User contract we can create. So we'll look for the logic uh in a minute, but as of now let's create one more file here called fund contract.js. And most important, we have to bind all those things properly when we are creating multi-level files. That I'm gonna show you here itself. Now my 3 files got created. But now in default setup, we always used to deploy single file, right? But now I have here 3 different files. So how it gonna work, right? So you have to understand that properly, how exactly it gonna work. So if you remember, we have here index.js, which is very important to understand. So I'll just remove my terminal, not needed today. So here we are doing binding. Index means this is my first entry point of my whole program. My compiler will start reading my code from index.js, right? So index.js is the someone which will tell me to which file to read or what to use or how to use it, right? So now you can see this is the old structure what we used to do. Now simply I gonna remove this we don't need, because we gonna override this structure with our code. So what exactly we need over here, we have to define each and every component. Let's say we have to import those component and export over here. But before that, before importing and exporting, we have to write a smart contract, right? So how exactly we can import? This is the way there. How can we import it? Simply like saying import user contract from import, and then whatever we have imported, we have to export it like this. Export user contract, because this is just like defining the functions, right? Just defining their file, and then we are exporting those file, correct? And at the end, what we need to do, for register purpose, for registering all chain code, we have to define that it is a contract. We have to create one more variable called contracts, and inside contracts, whatever the variables we exported, whatever the files we have exported, that we have to define. So remember that now these three things, whatever we have defined here, user contract, fund contract, and token contract, is going to treat my smart contract name inside my chain code. I have a high level chain code, and inside my chain code I have to use the references. Earlier, maybe in default setup, we always need to use it with with my chain code name, but we never use with the actual file name, whatever we define. Like, let's say in my default setup there was basic asset transfer smart contract, but I'm not using that with the asset transfer smart contract. I always trigger that from my node SDK, whatever the chain code name I'll give at a time of deployment. So don't worry if you're not getting stuff right now. That will look very detailed when we are invoking this chain code or using this chain code. Perfect. Now let's move to the register part, user contract. Okay. So now here we have to understand the basic structure, how we are going to create the smart contract. Very first, we have to understand what are the utilities we're gonna use. Okay. So what we need to do, we always use this use static when we are using JavaScript and the import part. Uh, and we are using the model type JavaScripting, right? You know, there is a common JavaScript and ES26, right? So that's what we gotta use here. Fabric Contract API. So Fabric Contract API is a package that what we are using in our, you can see here in dependencies, we are using Fabric Contract API and Fabric Sim. Okay. So that we have to import here to define my chain, define this particular file as a contract file. And then there are basic functionalities we have defined in our utilities to get all timestamp required, and that, yeah, when one more file we need to create for utilities. So let's create that as well. We are gonna define it in root here itself. We'll say utils. Oh, where it is typing my utils.js, and in that utils we're gonna define the general functions. Let's say uh assets exists or not, get timestamp, required MSPs, get all users by type. Now let me just grab that over here quickly. So these all are the functions what we need. I'll explain those things in detail one by one, but let me first start with from our user smart contract. Then we'll come back to the utilities whenever we require that specific function. We're gonna look into it. Okay. Now we have to define my smart contract. Okay. So how can we define it? So we have to start. So remember that this is a class wise function, right? So you have to start with the class and then the constructor to make it as a super. So it's like that. How you will define it is a class, and then you'll say, yeah, this is my, I've defined user contract as a class and extend this smart contract, extend the contract function. Now this user contract is treating as a contract, smart contract. Then you have to always pass a constructor to make it. This is that what we are passing as constructor to make it as default. Yeah, this is my super class. And now we'll start our writing one by one functions. If you look into the README file, there we have all the functions. We can see inside my user smart contract, you can see register NGO, and register donor, register bank, and then get all. These are write operation and these are read operation, right? Now let's try one by one. Now let's try to register the NGO. I have already written, and this is a simplified version for you guys. So let me explain you what exactly we are doing over here. So we have register NGO function where I'm taking the input for NGO ID, name, registration number, address. These parameters can vary based on whatever the data you want to store inside your ledger. Okay, these are just a params that what I'm taking from the user through my node SDK. they'll call this function and add these parameters. Then require MSP. Require MSP context, it's like org3 MSP, where we are using this for checking purpose, right? That's what I always mention. We are using three type of organization 1, 2, 3. So org3 is my NGO MSP. So NGO admin is connected with my org3. From org3 only they got created. So first we'll check two level of authentication. First, the request, whatever I'm coming from my ledger, that request is coming from whom? Is it for org3, is it for org1, or is it for org2? When I'm saying org1, org2, org3, so what I'm trying to say is it coming from government party, it is coming from NGO, or it is coming from platform. So org3 is my NGO, right? As for the definition what we have defined. So org3 is MSP, and then org NGO admin, right? NGO admin is what we have created. We have not created yet, but we're gonna create that for the organization MSP3. Now, this required MSP function is defined in utils. You can check what exactly happening here. Now, you can see require MSP is what exactly it's going to check. It will take an array of allowed MSP and it will check against the role. So this is the very important function, context.client identity get MSP ID. Okay, get MSP ID is a default function inside my client identity. Okay, client identity context, they will fetch the data from their certificate at the time of login, and at the time of making any request to the Chaincode will pass their certificate, and from their certificate they will fetch their MSP ID and the attributes, what role they have. And you gonna see this thing in your when we are registering the certificate for user. At that time we'll define the specifically what is MSP ID for this user, and what is the role for this user, along with the username and other attributes also we can define. As of now, this is a custom defined. This attribute is something that we have a control. MSP is the default one for each and every one. MSP is required, but this role can be renamed as something designation or department, something whatever you want you can give it. This is completely business logic permission. This is custom. I defined it as attribute name as role. You can define it as password, role, user ID, UUID, department. So just for your uh, flexibility, with respect to flexibility or with respect to use case, and it is not required key you can define only one role in your certificate. You can define n number of roles or n number of attributes, whatever level of segregation or separation you required in your chain code. These all things comes in a certification generation. When we are generating the certificate at the time of registration, after completing this complete chain code writing, we'll jump to that one in node SDK part, and then we'll write my the logic to create these certificates for the individual, right? Onboarding, admin, users, and all those things. At that time, we'll look into it where exactly we're writing role. Cool. And now this is just if we're checking. If this, I'm explicitly checking the MSP ID that what already I'm taking, and I'm checking is this MSP ID included in the certificate who's trying to trigger. If it is included, we'll say yes. If it is not included, this is, you can say exclamatory mark in front of this. So if it is saying it's not included, then we'll simply say access is denied for this user. Okay, now let's look for our second function. What exactly doing after that? Once we check the logic, we are saying we are defining here NGO key with the NGO keyword and hyphen NGO ID. Why I'm doing this? Just for if you see the structure, when we define data in my ledger, it will take as a single entry, right? So it will take as a, how I will define it. It's like whenever you are defining, let's say this is a array, so it will take like this is a one entry, and then again here is a second entry, here is a third entry, and inside this one entry you can treat it as a complete array, or you want to treat it as an object. However you want to do it, you can do it, right? Object top object. So this is how your ledger will get defined when you are writing. So what I'm trying to say, each will look like same, even though if you, this is maybe this is your NGO entry, and this is maybe your government entry, and is it treating it as like array, and this is something which is again treating it as like a object, and it is something else entry, right? So it will take like one by one singular entry, and again with respect to their one reference key, everything will get added, right? So to fetch this key, should I remember, and I should have a proper segregation of these keys. Based on these keys, I can write a logic key. wherever I am defining as a starting with NGO, just mark it as NGO's entry. Then I can read that letter properly. So for that purpose, I'm just defining my key properly. Okay, just remember this thing. And after that, very first we are checking, is this NGO keys exist in my ledger. So exist, asset exist, this is the function that what we are using for the ledger. And here asset exist is again coming from the utils. So if you go up here, what exactly we are doing, we are getting get state, stub dot get state is the function, put async function, asset exist. So this here we are using context.stub.get asset. So this is very important. What it is going, it is, this is again the default function that what we are getting from the context stub, where you are reading to the ledger and passing that asset ID and against fetching the data. It could be if it is data is length is greater than 0, then we are saying yes, it's good, we have that asset, and then we are returning it back to the function. This my smart contract. If it is exist, then we'll throw error. This is already exist. Okay. If we return true, if we find some result, then it will going to exit. If not, then we'll proceed and then we'll create our NGO variable object where we are saying NGO ID, name, registration number, address, contract description, and all those stuff. You know, one more thing I required here. So as we discussed in previous video, we're gonna store the uh, their CIDs. We're gonna give allocate their batches, right? Their custom batch. So to store that custom batch, we're gonna give them CID. CID is like my IPFS CID hash, right? Where I'm storing their file, correct? So that what I will do over here, I'll just simply add that description CID. You can rename it whatever you want. You can say that's as profile CID or simply CID, profile CID or user CID, whatever, photo CID. But ultimately, we are storing the file inside that as a one image with respect to their profile, or we can store only hash of the address for that IPFS. Okay. Now, just create an MSP and just taking explicitly who is calling it as client get MSP ID and then get ID. That whatever get ID is the something lengthier one. They'll get the complete naming convention part. When I'll create that asset, you'll get to know that how the structure it is. I'll explain at that time in a little better time. And here very important, like so where I caused the error when I'm just drafting this particular smart contracts, get timestamp. So this is again a util function where what I'm doing, see here, this is very basic but very important one. Uh, if you cannot define directly date as a timestamp here. Earlier I used the date, but then later I have to refactor it little bit to work in a proper way. So you have to make sure that to convert it into the string and then you are storing it. So very first I'll get the transaction timestamp and I'm converting that transaction timestamp into my local ISO string format with respect to converting their milliseconds and then nanoseconds and properly, and just making it as date is equal to new date and date is converting this, so it will going to return it properly. Okay, so make sure that conversion is very important, otherwise it's gonna give you error. Then I'm again defining type as NGO where I can sort my asset based on type. Cool. And after that, most important, I'm simply putting this data into my ledger. So this is my context.stub put state. So there are only two functions in my chain code level. So one is get state and another is put state. So with respect to put state, there is a NGO key that what we defined in here as a key, and then mapped with that key, this is my buffer data. This buffer data is this thing, this object we defined. Now here we have to understand whatever we store in ledger, it will go always as a buffer. We are not storing a plain data in my ledger. Okay, just remember that it will store as a buffer. So we are converting first this JSON into the stringify. We will stringify it by converting JSON into the string and that string into the buffer. Okay, and that buffer it is going to put into the state. Once it's success, then we are returning that particular object to the user. Hey guys, that is what we stored in a ledger. So this is about register NGO. Similarly, in the same manner, we're gonna create multiple register function for my bank and for my donors. Now here we have get function as well. We'll look get function later. Let me grab the register donor and then register bank. Okay. Now here same modification we need to do. The explanation is same, pretty much same logic I'm doing here. Get state, get the ID, check exist. But here I want to add, we need to give CID for donor as well, right? As we discussed, we're gonna give CID for everyone. So let's add the CID here as well. And then for, okay, did I copy donor again? Yeah, two times I copied. Cool. Let me grab my bank as well then. For bank also, we can assign a batch, give a batch. So there also we can store a CID. I thought of CID concept later, like giving that batch. I got idea we can give batch. So that's how I added it later. So that's why I'm just modifying it here. Just here, one more thing. One more key thing. Now you can check for bank. I'm checking organization MSP as 2 and I'm checking their user as government user because government user is creating the bank. So their role could be a government user, right? Or we can give any role. If you want to role give as a bank, you can give this as a bank as. Okay, just one more thing. One more thing. Now we are registering the bank. Okay, so bank itself is not going to register themselves. So that's how government user is the authority or admin who is going to register the bank. That's why we have kept it as government user. Okay, or you can create a separate bank admin altogether as a role, or we can call it as a RBI admin or some whatever it is, maybe RBI user, and those guys will going to create the bank. So that's always remember the proper access management level how you are defining it. And similarly for donor, we don't have any access management now here because I want, so see, bank user can be a donor, anyone can be a donor, so I don't want to make sure that or restrict to come through any specific authority. So if you have access to the portal, you can register yourself as a donor by any basic permissions. So that's how I'm not checking it anything. So just to give flavor, like if you won't check, what will happen? So this is just, you have to skip this validation required part and it's good to go. Cool. So this about register, and let's see for get as well. So get is pretty simple. That's we already saw in get exist asset. That's what we're using, like get step, contact stub, uh, get state. So similarly, simply what we'll do, the get state based on ID. We'll get the ID here, right? We'll define it with NGO, and then we'll check if this user is already there or not, right? That's what we will get NGO. Similarly for get donors and get bank. So this is for admin purpose or for their respective users. Once they are registered, they want to check against their ID. Is it get registered properly or not, right? This is pretty important one. It's nothing much, simply checking, getting the asset, storing in bytes. If it is existing, if it doesn't found, we'll say not found. If the length is 0, if found, just convert it into string and just send it over. Okay. Now, as per this README file, we have 3 more functions to get all banks, get all NGO, and get all donors, right? So this is how we can define it. Pretty simple one. So I have defined here get all banks. So what I'm doing is, very first I'm checking the permission. Who can do that? Only government user. So this is for admin purpose. I've defined these functions. If you are an admin user, then you can say get all user by type, get all user by type. So again, I'm creating here one utility function where I'm typing it as bank. Now let's go to the utilities or definition. Now see here, very important stuff, what we are doing here. Cool. Get all users based on type. So what we are doing, we are defining here very first one result object as array. That the object, we will do the little filtering over here, and then we'll keep adding those user. And iterator is here to get state by range. So this is again a default function from Ledger. So get state by range is from starting range to end range. If you don't define the range, it will take as a whole ledger. Okay, so I want to give the whole ledger because I don't know the range where I have structured my document. Then this is just a variable to iterate it. Each item they'll iterate, and while this result dot done, what we are going to check, result dot value convert it into string, and that string we are passing, and we are checking the user type. What exactly we are doing? By the way, let me show you once again. Just see the object type. See, first we are getting this object, and each object type we are checking. This is a bank, this is a donor, and this is NGO, right? Each object have a keyword called type that we are trying to filtering out. We are trying to check their type, and this user type I'm taking from the user itself in my this filter function, get all function, right? In get all function, whatever the type you are giving, based on this type, I'm going to filter out my complete records, right? Putting it in one single array and returning it back. Get all result return. Right? Simple. It might look little complex, but this is the result how we'll get inside. It will be in inside value dot value. Then we are checking that, and then simply that record that type you are checking if it is string or sorry, if it is matching their exact value. This is like triple equal is like checking their type and value. If it is matching exactly, then just return, push it into my result, and then at the end, once the iteration is done, close the iterator and then just return that object, right? So this is happening for all the different types for donors. So whatever type you are giving here, bank, NGO or donor, it gonna return the specific result. Okay, so this is all about our user smart contract.